Yeah, thank you very much. Good to be here. Good evening. And yeah, it's just a great opportunity to come and share with you what's happening in Papua New Guinea. We work with Mission Aviation Fellowship, living in Papua New Guinea, and what we do is we fly small airplanes into the jungle and the remote areas, the isolated areas, to bring help, hope, and healing in the name of Jesus to all the isolated people in the jungle that are completely cut off. And I'm a pilot. I fly one of the airplanes, and my wife, Siobhan, or Shiv for short, she works in logistics, and she helps to do all the things in the background to help get the airplane in the air. And one of the things, our main calling in Papua New Guinea is to work with the local church and to facilitate them to do discipleship and outreach and training. And we really do a whole bunch of other things, and we'll be talking about that in a minute, but just to show you just a brief snapshot, here's a little video here.
From developed countries that go over to all of these developing countries to help support and encourage them. And there we are in Papua New Guinea, at the very edge of the map. And you can see there's a wide variety of countries that MAF work in. Next slide. Oh, I'll come to that again. On the right, Papua New Guinea, yep. Next slide. I've got a close-up one of PNG in a second. So every 4 minutes, we have a plane take off or land. So MAF has a fleet of over 130 aircraft worldwide. Next slide. So that's why we're taking off and landing so much. In fact, MAF flies to more locations than the top 5 aviation companies in the world, the top 5 aviation operators. If you think of Virgin and Air Canada and British Airways, MAF flies to more places. In Papua New Guinea alone, we have over 200 airstrips that we serve. We have a fleet of 10 aircraft. We have around about 15 pilots. However, although Papua New Guinea is a very small country, way down there just above Australia, in fact, Papua New Guinea is a little bit smaller than Alberta. Yet MAF is unable to serve everyone in Papua New Guinea because there's such need. There's so many people that require our services. But we only have 10 aircraft and we only have 15 pilots. So we just try and ask God to give us wisdom to make sure that the work that we are able to do is the work that He wants us to do. Now we've got another video now, which tells you a little bit about the history of MAF, specifically in Papua New Guinea. MAF was actually founded over 75 years ago by people who were in the military, and they saw aircraft being used to drop bombs and death during World War II, but they also saw isolated people, and they realized that these aircraft could help support the missionaries that were already overseas to be able to bring them aid and support and to reach further unreached peoples that had not had that access to that point. So out of the pain and the death of World War II is where MAF came from. Thank you. The video, please.
Shortly following World War II, a small group of Christian airmen returning to civilian life met together at a Bible college in Melbourne, Australia. They met to discuss the possibility of employing their wartime military aircrew training to provide an air service to remote area missions. These visionaries believed that aviation could be used to cross borders and barriers, helping to bring hope, healing, and the message of the gospel of Christ to isolated peoples around the world. Just 3 years later, on the 7th of May, 1951, Australian pilot Harry Hartwig lifted off from Madang in his Oster autocar for his first mission flight into the interior of PNG. And so, Mission Aviation Fellowship was born in Papua New Guinea. Now, 70 years later, MAF stands as the longest continually serving air service in the nation. Today, with a fleet of 10 Cessna 208 Caravans, a national team well over 100 members strong, and a team of international staff from 13 nations, we are continuing the legacy of serving together to bring help, hope, and healing to isolated communities such that they are changed by the love of Christ. It hasn't always been easy. The stones of our memorial garden remind us of the many pilots and team members who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the giving of their lives in service to the Lord and the people of PNG. This includes our very first pilot, Edwin Harry Hartwig, who was killed in his plane just 3 months after that first flight that launched the mission of MAF in PNG in 1951. But through it all, the Lord has been and continues to be faithful. Each year, flying more than 400 medical patients, some 35,000 passengers, and nearly 2 million kilos of cargo, MAF remains a lifeline of connectivity to remote communities and a source of logistic support to the missions and agencies impacting those communities. We ask that you join with us as we give praise to the Lord for the 70 years of blessing, and pray with us that MAF will be able to continue in our mission of demonstrating the love of Christ to those we serve for many years to come. Mission Aviation Fellowship in Papua New Guinea, 70 years on and still going strong.
One of the airplanes you saw on there was the Cessna Caravan. That's the airplane I fly. It's a single engine airplane, and it's got 9 passenger seats, or if we're taking cargo, we can take about 1,000 kilograms of cargo on any given flight. And as I mentioned earlier, our main calling in Papua New Guinea is to work with the local church and to facilitate them and help them to do discipleship and outreach and training and evangelism. And a number of ways we do that is we help the pastors go around to all the different isolated villages, but also another way we do that is there's Bible schools in some areas of the countries. And when I say Bible school, you have to bring your expectations. It's not like Prairie Bible College down in Three Hills. I'm talking about a one-room wooden hut in a village, and it's just the local pastor has decided that he wants to start a little Bible college, so he gets a few guys around from the neighboring villages, and he'll invite them in to do a little bit of training. And so we'll go out and we'll pick them up with the airplane, because quite often what happens is they'll take their whole family at the start of the term, and they'll move with their whole family into that little village to do Bible school training. And at the end of term, we'll go in and take their family and take them back to their home village so that they can do some teaching in their home village and share what they've learned. And it was really interesting because just end of last year, November, is when the school term ended for the Bible school, and I was able to go into the village and help the Bible school students get back to their home villages. And when I was able to fly the one pastor in training back to his village, after we get back to his village, he gets out of the airplane with his family, and we finish the unloading. And I wish I could remember the Bible verse that he shared with me, but he came up to me and he gave me a big old bear hug and just said, thank you for your service. And then he shared a Bible verse with me, which was basically along the lines of, God has put you here for a purpose, and you're doing that purpose, and he's got more work for you to do here, so keep doing it. And that was just, a lot of times it gets to be a job over there and you forget the ministry side of things, and it gets into the background, but every once in a while it brings it to the forefront, and you just remember what we're doing over there, and it's really humbling when you get reminded of that. And so, yeah. We can just save questions till the end. Yeah, thanks. And a lot of what we do when we're not helping the local church is we're doing a lot of community development, medical evacuations, helping school kids get to and from their school every term. And the community development, what that looks like is a lot of it is taking people and supplies into these isolated villages, because there's almost no roads in Papua New Guinea, and where we live in an isolated community of about 1,000 people, and there's no roads in or out. And we have about 25 airstrips in a 50-mile radius that we serve on a regular basis, and no roads. And so a lot of what we do is take people into the villages, take supplies into the villages, construction materials into the villages, and also on the outbound leg, going back to town, what we'll do is we'll take vegetables or cash crops like coffee or cocoa beans and get that out to the market for them, because there's no roads, they have no way of getting those cash crops out to the market. And so we're able to help them a little bit with that and kind of get a little bit of more community development going. And one of the side things we get to do, we have a little project we call the Bible Box Project in PNG. We have little plastic toolboxes that we carry around with us in the plane, and we have the Bible in the common language. There's over 800 languages in Papua New Guinea, tribal languages, distinct languages, but there's one overall common language, trade language, and it's called Tok Pisin, and it's a pidgin English, so it's quite easy to learn, but not everyone understands the language, but a large percentage of the people can speak that language. And so we have Bibles in the common language, the trade language, the Tok Pisin. And so we're able to take those around with us into the villages. And when people come up to the airplane and they'll say, "Oh, do you have any Bibles for sale today?" And we sell them at a very steep discount so that they can afford them, but we have to sell them for a little bit so that there's actually a value to them. And they say, "Do you have any Bibles today?" And I'm like, Yep, I'll just finish unloading and finish my paperwork, and then I can get out my Bible box. And then once I do all that and I get my Bible box out and everybody around the airplane sees the Bible boxes there, they all rush up to the airplane as fast as they can. And I want a Bible, I want a Bible, I want a Bible. And I can sell about 15 Bibles in about 5 minutes. And it's humbling to see. It's really humbling to see that. There's just the passion and the hunger for the word over there. And so we have the little Bible box that we carry around with us, and that's a really fun project that we get to do. And just here's another video.
My name is Itopo Pano. I work as a pastor. And before we haven't had good news about God's word. We were living in the darkness. And we don't know good news about Lord Jesus. We put a strip and then MF come and help us. So now we are living in the light.
It's a unique experience getting MF pilots on board this great ministry. When they have enough weight room, they carry extra Bibles with them and they fly out to remote airstrips.
We call them Bible box, but it's basically a toolbox that we got out from hardware. took all the other trays out, and then we fill it with print Bibles, audio Bibles, biblical handbooks, dictionaries, commentaries, concordance. That also goes out. So a pilot goes out with this Bible box with 6 kilograms worth of all the other resources. Yeah.
I've had cases where people have walked for hours and hours and hours, or even up to half a day to get to an airstrip on the off chance that they might be able to buy a Bible out of the back of the plane. What we're seeing God do is push back the darkness with the light of His Word, and as people uncover more about who He is.
The Talk Fishing Bible is in high demand. At the moment, we cannot meet the demand that is out there in the remote areas. You talk to the MEF pilots and they say the first airstrip that they land, the whole box that they take out is all sold.
Items mentioned in that video was the audio Bible. The audio Bible is a device which is about the same size as a smartphone, and it has a copy of the Talk Fishing Bible, the Bible in the local language spoken, as well as some worship songs in the local language. And this is a great little device because the literacy rate is very low in Papua New Guinea. There's a lot of people who can't read and write. So sometimes getting a Bible out to them, it's no good. But if they can get an audio Bible, they can just click play and they can hear the Word of God spoken to them day or night, and it's solar rechargeable. So if they're out in the day in their garden, pulling up their sweet potatoes or weeding their garden, it can be recharging for them, so they don't need a power outlet, which these bush villages don't have. So these Bible boxes, they are a really great resource that we're able to partner with the Learning Technologies folks and provide to the bush strips. So just a little bit about us. So Ryan is the pilot with MAF, so it's fairly obvious what he does because everyone knows what a pilot does. His office is in the clouds and he quite enjoys the view that he gets. My work in operations support is a little bit more vague, a little bit more varied from day to day. My background is after I finished university, I was in the Royal Air Force as a logistics officer. And the experience that I got from serving in Her Majesty's Royal Air Force was great to be able to teach me about all the logistics involved with airports. And so when my contract came to an end, I started to look for something else to do. To be honest with you, I was not thinking missions. I was not thinking I'm going to go and be a missionary. No, I'm not, that wasn't in my mind. I thought, I've got these skills, they're really useful, I want to do something with them. And I started applying to the International Committee of the Red Cross, to UN, to various organizations. I didn't think that I could use my skills as an aviation logistician within missions. someone said, "Oh, why don't you go and do overseas missions?" I was like, "Well, no, what I do is too specialist. No one's going to be able to use me. So that's just a silly idea. So let's try and find something I could do." My dad said, "Well, why don't you go and work in London? You know, you can double your salary if you go to London." It's like, no, that sounds really awful. Spending all of my time earning money that goes into someone else's pocket. No, thank you very much. I wanted to do something which I felt would be a force for good in the world. Didn't know what that was, and like I said, didn't think it was missions, but it was actually my mum who said to me, "Well, what about Mission Aviation Fellowship? Haven't you heard of these folks? They were started by some people in the Royal Air Force, so surely that's the ideal solution for you." I was like, yeah, not so sure about this. So did some investigating, found out a little bit more about MAF, applied to them at the same time as I applied to a few other charities and organizations. And in the end, God decided not to leave the decision up to me, because that's not a good idea. He made the decision for me and brought me to MAF. And it was the folks in MAF that decided that I would go to Papua New Guinea. So I didn't ask for Papua New Guinea specifically. In fact, 9 years ago, I had no idea where Papua New Guinea was, couldn't have found it on a map for you. So for those of you who saw earlier and were looking at the map, I was exactly where you were 9 years ago. So once I got to Papua New Guinea, then I was given the job of working in ground operations, which meant that I was in charge of a team of about 40 Papua New Guinean staff. And the ground staff do everything to enable the pilots to fly. So they take bookings for who wants to fly, to where, on what day. They take payment, because we do charge a fare, but it's a very, very low fare because people don't have to pay for the pilot. So we're able to keep costs down. And also we don't have to worry about profits. Commercial organizations need to meet that bottom line. MAF don't have to worry about that, which means we are able to land at an airstrip and pick up one person, even if the rest of the plane is empty. So that one person will pay one seat fare, but that won't cover the cost of the plane. But we know that if we don't fly there, then the only way they're going to be able to get out of their village is days walking or on a canoe or some other way, which is probably quite treacherous. The jungle in Papua New Guinea is extremely dense, so much so that they think there are still tribes in Papua New Guinea that have had no access to the outside world to this day. They still think there are isolated communities there. The jungle is so dense, the mountains so treacherous, and then there are swamps and rivers as well. So it really is challenging. And all of that terrain makes it some of the most challenging flying in the world, and therefore some of the most dangerous as well. So I got to Papua New Guinea and was working with some of the local staff, and I'm still working with them. In the 8 years that I've been there, my job has changed slightly, but some of the things I do at the moment include training and mentoring some of those Papua New Guinean staff to help them do their jobs better. Sometimes we get new software in, and I'm one of the people that helps them to figure out how the new software works. And sometimes I plan flights that are a little bit out of the ordinary. So most of the flights we plan, if Ryan's flying in the day, his plane will leave our base, our home in Telefomin, and it might do hop to A, to B, to C, and then back to Telefomin, or perhaps to a different airstrip where it'll get fuel, and then do another to D, to E, to F, and then back to Telefomin. That's what our Papua New Guinean staff do to plan that on a daily basis. But earlier in the year, I organised a bunch of flights. They were a little bit more complicated. We were working with Rotarians Against Malaria. They were wanting to deliver approximately 35,000 mosquito nets to communities around where we serve. They wanted us to land in 21 airstrips, and each airstrip doesn't just serve one community, it serves multiple communities. So some of these airstrips serve a couple of communities, some airstrips serve a dozen or more communities. So they gave us a list and they said, okay, we want this number of mosquito nets to this airstrip, this number to another airstrip. And I had to figure out how to plan these flights as efficiently as possible, trying to get all of these mosquito nets delivered in a short amount of time. So within a week, we used 3 aircraft, we used 4 pilots, and we delivered these 35,000 mosquito nets to 21 airstrips. So that's something that doesn't happen every week, but that's something that I'm very privileged to get involved with. And it's really amazing knowing that these mosquito nets, just a little thing, just a net, has gotten to places to be able to save people's lives and improve their quality of lives. Because of course, if you're in a remote bush community, and if you get malaria, that is going to prevent you from doing anything you need to survive. So if you're a kid that maybe goes to school in that community, you're going to dip out on school for a month or two. That may mean you can't pass your exams at the end of the year, which means you don't go to school the following year. There's only about enough high school places in Papua New Guinea for about half of the population of children. So Papua New Guinean kids, they understand the value of education, which I'd love to share that with some kids back in the UK, the privilege of education. So to be able to get a mosquito net, which means they don't get sick and then miss that school, that's actually life-changing as well as life-saving. Next slide, please. A lot of people ask us about COVID in Papua New Guinea. It's still a hot topic, obviously. COVID did affect Papua New Guinea. It affected every country in the world, but it didn't affect it greatly. I was told that during the height of COVID here in Alberta, the average age of people who were sadly dying from COVID was about 83. Well, in Papua New Guinea, the average life expectancy is less than 60. There are so many diseases that are already killing people in Papua New Guinea that COVID was just something else. When the height of COVID happened, MAF was forced to stop flying for about a month. The government made a rule. The country went into lockdown. No aviation organisation was allowed to fly. There are several commercial operators in Papua New Guinea, but they only fly to maybe 5 or 10% of the airstrips. The 200 odd airstrips that we fly to, most of them, we are the only airline that flies to them. So these airstrips would be completely isolated if we were not flying to them. And for a month, they were. We have no statistics to know how many people died from non-COVID related sickness, injury, childbirth complications during that month. We have no way of knowing, but we know it happened because MAF is that lifeline. So over the past 2 years, once we were allowed to fly again, the rules changed. Just as it did in most countries, governments were reassessing the information as it came in. So sometimes we were only allowed to fly cargo. Sometimes we could fly passengers, but only within the same province. We couldn't fly to neighbouring provinces. But all of this was extremely challenging because the government struggled to communicate with the bush strips. If you imagine, they may put it in the newspaper, but how does the newspaper get to the bush strips? Well, MAF has to fly it there. And they may put it on the radio, but does someone have their radio turned on at the point of that broadcast? So we had a lot of people who would contact MAF as they do normally to say, hey, we've got a couple of people, we'd like to travel to town, we need to pick up some supplies. And we would have to tell them, we're really sorry, we're not allowed to take you. It's not our rules, it's the government's rules. And being an international organisation, we have to obey the law of the land. But they didn't understand that. And there were some times when some people got really annoyed and quite aggressive towards myself and some of my colleagues about their frustration because we are their lifeline. And they couldn't understand why we weren't flying, which was really hard. But fortunately, there hasn't been a major issue in Papua New Guinea through COVID. We do know of people who have died. In fact, the ambulance driver at the hospital in the town where we live was one of the victims of COVID, sadly. But the numbers were low because the death rates remained fairly steadily. But even before COVID happened, MAF has been doing medical evacuation flights for the whole time we've been there. That's one of the major reasons that we serve. We are the ambulance. Ryan is the ambulance driver when he flies his plane, and we do hundreds of medical evacuation flights every year. One of the major reasons we do medevac flights is to help women who have problems in childbirth. Probably, I would say, more than half of our medevacs are related to pregnancy and birthing issues. And in fact, in Papua New Guinea, there's one of the highest infant mortality rates in the world there. So we've got another video now to show you a medevac that Ryan did a couple of years ago. What I found amazing about the way that God works in PNG is how he takes things which to us seem like problems, seem like things have gone wrong, and he makes it into something better, where you've planned a medical evacuation flight and the weather closes in so that you can't do it that day, and you know that there is someone suffering and we can't get the plane to them to help them. And then the next day that flight happens and you discover that God knew that overnight there would be 3 more people who would need to be on that flight. And the first person is still okay, they're still alive and their life has not been compromised in any way, but 3 more lives have been able to be saved and people helped because God knew. What we thought was a mess, God worked out for the best.
Yeah, so that was a couple years ago, that video, but that's pretty typical of quite a few of the medical evacuations that we do with the women having problems in childbirth. And my wife and I, we moved to Telefomin about 4 years ago. We got married 5 years ago, and then after we got married, went back to PNG and moved to Telefomin. And the Easter after we got to Telefomin, we got to take part in a Easter service, Easter celebration, and all the churches in Telefomin had a combined service, and we had a big tent meeting. They chop down trees, make a tent frame, and then cover it in tarps, and we all meet under the tarp. And hundreds of people there, and we're all sitting on the ground, and we had just moved to Telefomin, and we were in that tent meeting and sitting on the ground there, and I was just looking around at all the people in the tent and outside the tent and hanging in the trees trying to get a better view. And I was just asking God, okay, God, you've brought us here. What do you want us to do here? We've taken a step, we've come here. What's the next step? And I mean, it's just quite simple. The words in my head, just help the people, serve the people, love the people. And it doesn't get any more complicated than that. I mean, no matter where you are, Westlock, Papua New Guinea, doesn't matter. Just help the people, serve the people, love the people. That's it. And I mean, to be over in Papua New Guinea takes a huge team of supporters for us from all over the UK, all over Canada. And we're very blessed to have all the people praying for us and supporting us. And we couldn't be there without that. And over the past few months, we've been praying and asking God for the support to send us back to Papua New Guinea for another 4 years. But we feel God's leading to stay in Papua New Guinea for the rest of our careers, whatever that looks like, however many years that is. And to keep us to send us back to Papua New Guinea, we've been praying and asking God for another $750 a month for the next 4 years. And so I just ask if you guys could pray, hold us up in your prayers and pray for that as well, and just that he would provide that. And I mean, every team, every missionary overseas, no matter what they're doing, they have a huge support team behind them, whether it's prayer or financial support. And the people that do that for us, they are a huge blessing to us, and they're a part of that ministry over there. And without them, we couldn't be over there. Yeah, next slide. Could you go to the next slide there? Oh, there we go. And the next one. You can go to the next one as well. Yep, there you go.
So the most important support that we need is prayer. If we don't have prayer, then we're not doing what God wants us to do, and there's no point. So if you would have time to be able to remember us in your prayers in the coming weeks and months, here are a few prayer points so you have something specific to pray for. For us personally, we'd really love your prayer for rest. This past couple of years has been quite tiring, as it has been for most people. COVID has, I think, worn us all down. So we would be really grateful for prayer, especially in the next couple of weeks, because we return to Papua New Guinea at the end of August. And we're really asking God that he would give us the rest over the next couple of weeks. So when we go back, we're refreshed and we're ready for the next 2 years to serve him. Our general and mental health. It's a stress living in another culture. We love living in Papua New Guinea, and like Ryan said, we really feel called there. We really feel like it's our home. The fact that we met there as well really puts it in our hearts, but it can be a real stress at times. So if you could pray for our general and our mental health on a day-to-day basis. And safety. Like I said, flying in Papua New Guinea is some of the most treacherous flying in the world, but also living in Papua New Guinea has its risks. And unfortunately, we have experienced the not so nice side of that. But that's a risk in any country in the world. So for safety for Ryan whilst he's flying and us living in Papua New Guinea, that would be great. And lastly, to reach our fundraising target, as Ryan has said. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about us, we have a blog. If you visit www.ryanandshiv.net, you can find out our stories about our life in Papua New Guinea, see some of our photographs. If you'd like to know a little bit more about MAF in general, you can visit mafc.org. And for those of you here, we have a little table out back which has a few things from Papua New Guinea if you'd like to come and have a look afterwards. And if you'd like to sign up to get our quarterly newsletter, it's just our personal newsletter, then you can put your email address on our list out in the other room, and we'd be very happy to share with you what's going on and any future prayer points. But we'd really like to say, next slide please, thank you so much for having us here this evening. It's a real privilege to be able to share the work that we're doing. And as Ryan said before, we work full time in Papua New Guinea, and although it is a mission and it is a privilege, sometimes it can feel like a job. We get up in the morning, we go to work, Ryan goes and flies his plane, I sit behind my desk at my computer. Sometimes it feels like just a job. But being able to share with all of you reminds us that this is not just a job that we do, it's a privilege to live and work in Papua New Guinea. It's a privilege to serve the Lord. So thank you for helping us to remember the privilege that it is to serve the Lord. Thank you.